In the early hours of June 7th, 1917, thousands of British soldiers waited silently in the darkness beneath the rain-soaked skies of Belgium, staring toward German lines that had dominated the ridges around Ypres for years. Some men checked their rifles, others smoked in silence. Most already knew what attacking German trenches usually meant by this stage of the war. Machine guns, mud, artillery, and entire battalions disappearing in open ground. But this attack was supposed to be different, because for more than a year, British tunneling units had been digging beneath the battlefield itself, carving massive underground chambers directly under German positions, while the war above them continued without pause. And hidden beneath the earth that night was enough explosive power to physically tear apart part of the Western Front. Many of the German soldiers standing above it had absolutely no idea it was there. By 1917, trench warfare on the Western Front had already become a nightmare of industrialized killing. Verdun had turned entire forests into crater fields. The Somme had shown that modern offensives could erase tens of thousands of men within hours. Around Ypres, British and German armies remained trapped in a landscape of trenches, flooded shell holes, barbed wire, artillery fire, and constant death. But beneath that battlefield, another war had been unfolding almost entirely underground. A war of miners. Both sides quickly realized that trenches created a terrifying new opportunity. If soldiers could tunnel beneath enemy positions, they could place enormous explosive charges directly underneath trenches, bunkers, artillery positions, or entire defensive strongpoints. And once underground warfare began, it escalated rapidly. British, French, and German tunneling companies started digging enormous tunnel systems beneath no man's land, while enemy miners attempted to detect, intercept, or destroy them underground. Sometimes opposing tunnel teams could hear each other through the earth itself. The conditions underground were horrifying. Tunnelers worked in cramped shafts, so narrow many men could barely turn around inside them. Air became thick with mud, dust, sweat, candle smoke, and explosives. Some tunnels flooded constantly. Others collapsed without warning, burying entire teams alive beneath tons of earth before anyone above ground even realized what had happened. And silence became a matter of life and death, because underground, noise could kill you. German and British listening posts were built specifically to detect enemy digging operations beneath the front lines. Soldiers sat underground for hours in total darkness, listening through primitive devices pressed against tunnel walls, trying to identify the sound of enemy picks, shovels, or digging equipment somewhere deep beneath them. And once enemy tunneling was detected, the underground war became even worse, because now both sides began planting countermines. Entire underground battles started taking place in darkness beneath the Western Front. Tunnelers raced against time, trying to reach enemy shafts first. Some units intentionally collapsed opposing tunnels with explosive charges. Others broke into enemy passages and fought underground in conditions survivors later described as suffocating and terrifying beyond description. One wrong sound could mean the enemy already knew exactly where you were digging. One wrong tunnel angle could place you directly beneath a German countermine, powerful enough to bury everyone alive instantly. And unlike trench warfare above ground, there was often nowhere to run underground. Nowhere was this more extreme than beneath Messines Ridge near Ypres. For years, German forces had controlled the high ground there, giving them commanding observation over British positions below. British commanders believed any future offensive in the region would fail unless the ridge itself could first be destroyed. So British tunneling units began one of the most ambitious underground operations in military history. Their goal sounded almost impossible: dig beneath the entire German defensive line and plant enough explosives to obliterate it. The scale of the tunneling operation became enormous. British miners dug for months beneath German positions, often working hundreds of feet underground through wet clay and unstable soil while trying to avoid German detection. Some tunnels stretched for incredible distances beneath no man's land. Underground chambers were packed with massive explosive charges so large that many soldiers involved reportedly struggled to comprehend how destructive the final explosion might actually become. More than 600 tons of explosives were eventually placed beneath German lines, and all of it waited underground, while thousands of soldiers continued fighting above it, completely unaware. German tunnelers knew something was happening. They heard digging, detected vibrations, found partial British tunnel systems, and launched desperate countermining operations trying to locate the main charges before they could be detonated. Sometimes German miners came terrifyingly close. In several sectors, underground fighting turned into a deadly race, measured in feet and inches beneath the battlefield. British tunnelers often continued digging while knowing German countermine teams might already be approaching through the darkness nearby. At times, soldiers underground reportedly stopped speaking entirely and communicated only through hand signals because even whispers felt dangerous. What made Messines even more terrifying was the amount of planning hidden behind the explosions themselves. This was not a sudden attack improvised over a few days. It was a gigantic engineering operation carried out in total secrecy beneath an active battlefield for more than a year, while artillery, snipers, and trench raids continued above ground almost every night. British tunneling units removed thousands of tons of earth by hand, often carrying soil away in sandbags to avoid creating suspicious piles that German observers might notice from the ridge. In some sectors, miners worked so deep underground that temperatures became suffocating while oxygen levels dropped dangerously low inside the shafts. And every day underground carried the risk that German counterminers were already approaching through the darkness nearby. Some tunneling teams reportedly slept beside explosives, powerful enough to erase entire sections of the battlefield if accidentally detonated. Others disappeared completely after tunnel collapses sealed them underground forever. The psychological pressure became enormous, because unlike soldiers in trenches, tunnelers often fought an enemy they could not see at all. Only hear a distant scraping sound through the earth, a hammer somewhere behind a wall of clay, or the sudden realization that the Germans might already be digging directly toward you with explosives of their own. And for many of the men beneath Messines Ridge, the most terrifying part of the war was not the explosions above ground. It was the silence underground before them. Then came the morning of June 7th. At 3:10 a.m., the explosives beneath Messines Ridge detonated almost simultaneously. The result was catastrophic. Entire sections of the German line simply disappeared. The explosions were so enormous they reportedly killed thousands of soldiers instantly and were heard in London more than 100 miles away. Massive columns of earth, fire, debris, timber, bodies, and trench fortifications erupted into the sky, while huge craters tore open the battlefield itself. Some witnesses believed the explosions looked volcanic. Others described the earth physically rising beneath them before the shockwave arrived. One British officer later said the blasts created pillars of fire climbing into the darkness. For many German soldiers near the explosions, there was almost no warning at all. Some were vaporized instantly inside trenches, bunkers, or tunnels beneath the ridge. Others were buried alive beneath collapsing earth and shattered fortifications. Entire defensive sectors ceased to exist within seconds. And for survivors farther away, the psychological shock was overwhelming because the battlefield itself had exploded. The detonations at Messines became some of the largest non-nuclear explosions in human history at that point. And yet the explosions were only the beginning, because immediately afterward, British artillery opened fire while infantry assault waves advanced behind the bombardment toward shattered German positions that had just experienced one of the most devastating surprise attacks of the entire war. This time, unlike the Somme, Entire sections of German defenses had genuinely been annihilated before the infantry attack even began. But even victory at Messines revealed something deeply disturbing about the evolution of industrial warfare. By 1917, killing enemy soldiers no longer required directly fighting them face to face. Now armies could destroy each other through engineering, geology, explosives, mathematics, mining, and industrial-scale planning carried out silently beneath the earth for months before the actual attack even started. The battlefield itself had become a weapon. And perhaps the most horrifying part was that for many of the men above Messines Ridge, the war ended before they even realized the attack had begun. One moment they were standing inside trenches believing the front line was stable. The next, the ground beneath them opened into fire.